Welcome to the first lecture on the chapter on human development. Developmental psychology is the study of how people change mentally, physically, and socially through the lifespan. I think a lot of us, when we hear the term developmental psychology, we think of childhood developmentalists, people that focus only on the early years of the lifespan. But more and more research is being done now on our elderly years, now that our population has become a larger percentage of our population is elderly. Developmental psychology is one of the largest subspecialties within psychology, and we know that through research that the human condition, who we are, is influenced by our genetics, our environment, our social factors, cultural factors, and behavioral factors. And we'll kind of look at those as we explore this chapter. One of the biggest questions in psychology is the nature-nurture question. How much of the human condition is due to our nature or our biology, and how much of the human condition is due to our environment, to our nurture? Developmentalists spend a lot of time exploring the nature-nurture question, and we'll look at that as we continue. So, development begins in conception. Our genetics and the intrauterine environment are responsible for a lot of the physical development. They're responsible for the physical development prior to birth. Something that research has shown over and over and over again is that the intrauterine environment is so critical to having healthy babies, that planned pregnancies are really critical. So my sister worked as a bartender for a couple years, and she's super cute. She's a tiny little thing. And men would always buy her drinks to drink with them. Now, she wasn't getting drunk or anything like that, but she drank alcohol fairly regularly. My sister had endometriosis, and after her 2 daughters decided to get a tubal ligation, she was told that it wasn't necessary after they started the surgery, because she had so much scarring in her fallopian tubes that she would never get pregnant again. It just wasn't possible. Guess who was pregnant 8 months later? Yeah. That was an interesting thing. We had some concerns as a family. Lori didn't know she was pregnant until about 8 weeks, but she knew she'd been drinking a fair amount. Not anything that's unhealthy, but it was just kind of part of her job. Because her pregnancy was unplanned, she didn't know she was pregnant for about 8 weeks, which meant she'd been drinking while the first 2 months of her pregnancy. Lori never drinks when she's pregnant. She just didn't know. So we did have some questions about how my niece Ellie would be when she was born. And she was born early. There were some issues because of her prematurity. But developmentally, she's just fine. And that was a big relief. The nervous system is functional by 7 months, but brain development continues far beyond our early years. The human brain doesn't finish developing until our mid-20s. And we'll look at that more when we get into Chapter 3 on neuroscience. But the human brain doesn't finish developing until their mid-20s. It never stops evolving, though. So those first 25 years is about all of the structures and the cells creating the connections they need. And after that, the brain changes based on our experiences. So those first 25 years, we're looking a lot at nature and nurture for the brain. Once the human brain has finished developing, then we're looking at experience and the environment and how that changes the brain. Human development occurs in predictable patterns, and this sequence of development is universal. Babies have to crawl before they can walk. They have to pull themselves up on furniture before they can start taking those first steps, trying to gain balance. Babies have to babble before they can say a word. There's a predictable pattern that's universal when it comes to infant development. Now, as we look at milestones within infancy and in child development, we need to keep in mind that milestones occur within an age range. So the average child takes their first step by about 12 months old. Parents who care about, they are very invested and want healthy children who are developing just fine, all of a sudden they realize, my baby's 13 months and she hasn't taken a step yet. Should I be worried? Not at all. The range for walking is anywhere between 10 months and 15 months. That's the range of normal development for walking. And so really with any milestone, there is this range. When we hear the average baby says their first word when they're a year old, that only means about 50% of infants have said an actual word by the age of 1. There is a lot of time to catch up. And sometimes it's not unusual to see if a child is a little advanced in one skill, they might be slightly behind in another. But it all balances out. And, usually when we look at as a child advanced in a skill or a little delayed in a skill, it's still within those normal ranges. It's just which side of the range are they on this skill versus that skill. Where are they with motor development versus social development? Now, the infant brain is quite dynamic. It grows very quickly and it changes quickly. So, before birth, our brain is organizing. And there are 2 things that the infant brain does that really facilitates this rapid growth that we see in infants. Various brain areas become more mature and more functional as the infant experiences new things, as they explore their world. And this process is hardwired. If something is hardwired, it's genetically based. So, in order for infants, children, and really any of us, in order to learn, we must be exposed to things that are new. It's really amazing. I think when children are thinking through something, you can actually see them thinking. They're just so intense as they're sorting through things. Everything is a new experience for them, which is fantastic. That facilitates their growth and it keeps them growing at a very rapid pace. The brain also learns to communicate through itself. So there are 100 billion neurons, or nerve cells, in the brain, and they create 100 trillion connections. A synaptic connection is a connection. It's where two neurons talk to each other. I have a hard time imagining what 100 trillion of anything is. The infant brain grows synapses at an incredible rate. They start learning, so infants start learning, they're exposed to new things, that challenges their brain to develop more, then they are experiencing new things, and it just keeps going and going and going. And it's this dynamic growth that allows infants to develop cognitively, socially, and their motor skills. So I'd like you to go to Moodle, and in the folder titled Chapter 9 Development Lecture Videos, please watch the videos titled BBC, Baby Synapse Connection, and How the Baby Brain Develops.